Hello there, welcome to lesson number 8 in our series on using FluidDesigner for 3D printing to create rings. In today's lesson we're going to show you how you can create a parametric spiral ring, a little bit like the previous lesson, but with a square cross section. So if you start off FluidDesigner, opening screen should look something like that. We need to go to Learning Projects, Jewellery Projects, Rings. And we're doing lesson number 8, so you want the object 08 parametric spiral ring with a square cross section. So you drag and drop that Blender file onto the workspace, and I'll just switch on the screencast key, so any key presses I make should be displayed here. And I'll just move these panels back a little bit and open that one up. So this is what we want to create, and as you can see, if we zoom in, it's got a square cross section, and also this particular ring is fairly chunky here. You'll see that there's a section, there's another section of the ring, there's another section and another section. As we go through this video, I'm actually going to round this ring off a little bit more than the finished item on the screen there. So what do we need to do? Well, the first thing we need to do, if we look in the help panel, is add curve and then add a Nurbs circle. So if we go to add curve and add a Nurbs circle, so that creates an object here in the middle of the screen. Now this object is actually going to be used to wrap around the spiral to create this square cross section. That's what we're going to do. So if we just go to view and zoom to selected, just scroll back a little bit, there's our Nurbs circle, and if we press, the radius of the Nurbs circle at the moment is 1 millimeter. So the radius is 1 millimeter, so in other words, at the moment the diameter is 2 millimeters, the diameter of the circle. And we can see that in the properties panel as well. X and Y are both 2. Now, instead of having a rounded cross section for our spiral ring in this lesson, we're going to change this into a square cross section. So what I want to do is I want to view it from the top. I want to look down on this. So if I go to view and top, there's my Nurbs circle at the moment, and I want to edit this Nurbs circle. So if we press the tab key on the keyboard, you'll see that's what our Nurbs circle looks like in edit mode. So the Nurbs circle's actually got a number of control points around it. So we could, and I'm just going to switch the snap feature on here, snap, because I want to be able to control what I'm going to do next. We could edit the Nurbs circle by dragging points out like that. So instead of a circular cross section, we could have this shape. And I'm probably going to need to move that panel back so I can select the cursor there. Okay, so we could change the shape of this Nurbs circle by moving the control point or control points around the circle. Okay, so any shape that we create here can be wrapped around the finished ring. And if you go to our website, if you go to our 3D printing shop on Shapeways, or if you go to Etsy, you'll see that we have taken some of these Nurbs circles and converted them into images of people's faces or people's profile. So any shape that you want, you can create this. There obviously are limitations in terms of 3D printing. You can't have, there are limitations, but you can play around and learn what is and isn't possible. But anyway, we want to change this into a square cross section. So first of all, what I'm going to do is to press the A key on the keyboard. A deselects all the control points, and then I'm going to press A again. Now what that's done is it's highlighted all the control points around this object, and there are 9 of them at the moment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the right mouse button, and I'm going to select this command called Subdivide the selected segments. And when I do that, you can see what happens if I just zoom in. you can see there's another control point created there, and another control point created there. So these were the two original control points, and one has been added in between. These were the two original control points, and one has been added in between. And as you can see, that sort of squares off my Nurbs circle. And I'm just going to do it a second time. So right mouse click and subdivide again. And as you can see, that makes it even more of a kind of square shape. So that's what I want to do. That's the easy way of creating a square cross section. So I can press the tab key now. Now as you can see, it's not exactly a square, but actually in terms of having a ring, having this rounded bit here in the corners is actually quite beneficial. So there's our square cross section now. Just zooming out and manipulating the window. So the next thing that we want to do, now we've created the Nurbs circle and squared it off, is we want to actually add a curve itself. So if we go to the menu, if we go to add curve and spirals, because it's a spiral we're going to create, we'll see this properties panel, parameters panel pops up, and we can change the type of spiral we've got here, the size and shape of it. Now if we just zoom in, if we go zoom to selected, so now the white bit there is actually our Nurbs circle that we've squared off. So the yellow circle is our spiral. So if we change the spiral type, nothing happens at 2, but 3 and 4, you can have different types of spiral, so you can play around with these parameters. Curve type, I don't think that makes too much of a difference. Spiral direction, clockwise or anti-clockwise, well that's not going to make any difference really in terms of creating rings. But the number of turns, well what we're going to do is we're going to create 3 turns for this ring. Now we can't see anything there at the moment, but when we change the radius growth, as you can see now we can see the 3 turns. I'll just switch it back to 1. Okay, so the radius growth is this bit here. This is the radius growth. So in 1 turn the radius moves out, and we want to set this radius growth at 1, so I'm going to type that in, and I need to set the turns back to 3 again. Okay, so there's our 3 turns with a radius growth of 1. Now I haven't changed the steps at the moment, but I am going to do that in a minute. The next thing we want to set is the radius, and clearly as we adjust the radius here, the radius is going to be the distance from there to the first circle, and so we want to set a value of 10 for this, so I drag it out. Not easy to set exactly 10 when you're doing it like this. It's much better to just type it in if you want to use a particular value. So you can see the Nurbs circle there with the square cross section. There's our 3 turns of the spiral. So our radius of 10 is the distance from there to the start of the first circle. So in other words, our diameter is 20. And you can see it's 25.5 is the x and the y, well the x value here, because 25.5 is the distance from here to the outside, not to the inside. The inside diameter is what's crucial, because that's the one that's got to fit around your finger. Next value we want to change is the height, and we want to change the height to 6. Now as we do this, as you can see, it's lifting up the curves, so the height is effectively the width of the ring, and we want it at 6. And because there are 3 turns, the total height is 18, just over 18 millimeters. So a value of 6 here, because there are 3 turns, gives you a Z value of 18. So if we were to change the number of turns down, you'll see that this goes down. Okay, so 18 millimeters is going to be effectively approximately the width of this ring. Now the next thing that we want to do is I'm actually going to change the number of steps in this. This item down here has actually got a number of steps of 24. If I reduce this right down, what you'll see what steps are. Steps are the number of times, what have we got? We've got 5 there, haven't we? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, 5 lines here make up 1 rotation of the ring. So that's what the steps are doing. So the smaller this value, the more chunky sort of style the ring's going to be. The higher this value, the more true rounded this object's going to become. So if we do it at 360, for example, if in effect every 1 degree turn of the circle we've got a step, or we've got a segment of the object. Now that's not what this is. This is actually only still at 24 steps. Okay, so we will notice a difference between the two objects. Okay, so those are all the changes we're going to make there. What we now need to do is we need to give this object some thickness, and we can do that because it's currently a curve. If we go to the properties panel, if we click on the show the curve data information, this properties panel here controls the curve. And there are 2 things that we need to change here. We want to add the Nurbs Circle as a bevel object. And notice what that does is it wraps the square cross-section Nurbs Circle. Yeah, it's not a circle anymore. It's a square cross-section. It wraps that square all the way around the 3 turns. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't fill in the end here. So to do that, we need to tick this box here to fill in the cap at the end. So there's our ring. It's tapering out slightly from this diameter at the bottom, and those are all the changes that we need to make. So to confirm these changes and to change it from a curve, remember the spiral was a curve, to change it to a mesh we need to go to Tools, Object Tools, and to convert it to a mesh. And as you can see now, we've got no curve icon here. We can't change that anymore now. So what we can do is delete this original object, and here's the one that we've created today. Now if we just view it from the top and zoom in, you can still see the original Nurbs Circle in the middle there. So if we were to highlight that, we could delete that. What we do need to do is measure the internal diameter of this object, of this ring. Okay, so it's 18.7 millimeters. If that wasn't the right size for your finger, what you'd need to do, I'm not going to do it here, but what you would need to do, as we've shown you in previous lessons, is if you add a cylinder and size the diameter of the cylinder to be the same as your finger, you can then select this and scale it, resize it. So S on the keyboard to scale it around the cylinder. That will give you a size to suit your finger. But always remember, if you do scale, you need to reset the vectors. Okay, now I haven't scaled it in this case, so I don't need to do that. Okay, so there's my finished ring with my square cross section. So I'm going to save this now. So I'm going to go to File and always go to Save As. Go up through the menu system and go to My Projects, Jewellery Projects, Rings, and we're going to save 08, the parametric spiral ring. We can't print that, so we need to export it, and we like to use the wavefront object format. Export it to the desktop as an OBJ file. taking a little bit of time to save it because we set one of the parameters very high there, so there are a lot of faces on this object. In fact, really a serious lot of faces. If I look up here, there are 415,000 faces because I set that value to 360 for one of the parameters. So it's still trying to save this now to my hard drive. Is it going to do it? I hope so. Yeah, it has finally saved it there. So as you can see, there are 415,000 faces on this object. So if we go to NetFab, go to Project and Open, go to the desktop, open 08 Parametric Spiral Ring. And again, you can see it's taking quite a bit of time to load this because the file size is quite large. It's actually telling me down in my panel here that it's 50 megabytes. Now that is quite large. It's still a printable file format if you go on the internet to do it. What's happening is that we've got a lot of faces here. We've made it a very smooth surface, but we do have problems. We've got this warning red triangle, and it's going to be around this bit. So if we just go to extras and repair the part, again, it's going to take a little bit of time because the file size is large. If we click on update, you can see the number of faces now has gone up. Well, we've got border edge problems and 4 holes, so let's run automatic repair and execute it to fix those problems. So the problems are around the cap at the end, and if I just click update there, you'll see they all disappear. But take a note of this value. There are 830,000 triangles. That's why it's taking time to load, and the reason for that is because we applied that value of 360 as the number of segments around it. What that does is give us a very, very smooth surface. Very smooth surface. Instead of the chunky one that's shown in the original image that appears when you open the lesson. So what we now need to do is to save this object. So if we go to Parts, export the part as a wavefront object, export it to the desktop, and it's 08 Parametric Spiral Ring Square, and that file is the printable file format. And I notice on my, so it's quite a large, as you can see, it's taking a bit of time to save it because it's quite a large file size. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of this lesson. It's a parametric spiral ring with a square cross section. Thank you.